I'm Brent Osbald at the Indiana State Police Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division. I'd like to welcome all of you to the Summer Safety Meeting of 2004. In conjunction with the Indiana Department of Education, School Traffic Safety Division, we will be discussing weather-related problems that you, as a driver, need to be made aware of. Also, we will be discussing a fatal school bus crash that occurred in November of 2003 on the south side of Indianapolis. The Indiana State Police Summer Safety of 2004. We'll be discussing a fatal school bus crash that occurred November 17th of 2003 on the south side of Indianapolis. Flooding. Indiana has had its share of flooding the last couple of years. Severe weather. Why is it important to you as a school bus driver to be aware of any threatening weather and to find a safe place for you and the students?
Hello, my name is Chris Barr. I'm a trooper with the Indiana State Police Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division. I'm assigned the Indianapolis Post. Today I'm going to discuss a fatal inside the bus school bus crash that occurred in my district in November of 2003. As you can see, I've got a diagram on the wall here of the roadway in this area. If you can get a visual, this is a hill crest, or the hill crest is actually forward a bit in this direction. What we have here is an injured raccoon that has recently been struck, apparently recently been struck. It is still alive and doing circles right on the center line of the roadway. We have a tree over here about 30 feet prior to impact, or 30 feet prior to the raccoon, that actually overhangs the road. Once the tree is 7 or 8 feet off the ground, it begins to overhang the road a bit in this area. We have a school bus that is approaching the scene. The driver sees the raccoon in the roadway. There begins to be a lot of chaos on the bus. There's students in the front of the bus that see this raccoon doing circles in the roadway. They kind of start to panic. And they're telling the driver, you know, don't hit it, don't strike the raccoon again, all of these things. The driver came to a stop, a complete stop or a near stop. As a result of the raccoon on the roadway, she took an evasive action, a slight evasive action to go around the raccoon so as not to strike it again. The tree that overhangs the road in this area, as the driver corrected and came back into the lane, the back of the bus glanced the side of the tree, just barely. We had a young man who had his head out the back window. Apparently, what we believe, he was trying to see, or he wanted to see the raccoon as the bus passed. He wanted to see this injured raccoon. He had his head out this back window. As the tree overhangs the road, when the back end tracked around the raccoon, there was a glancing blow. And as a result of this young man having his head stuck out this back window, he struck his head on this tree. Had the young man not had his head out the back window, the only damage to the bus would have been a slight crease in the drip edge on the rear of the bus, as well as the rearmost clearance lamp, just the lens was knocked off. That would have been the only damage as a result of this crash had the young man not had his head out the window. So it's a pretty bizarre crash. I won't deny that. Most crashes that we investigate, we can point to a negligent act or some specific thing that occurred that caused this crash that we could essentially blame it on. This crash is unique in that there were several pieces of this puzzle. And if you were to remove one piece of the puzzle, then we wouldn't be standing up here talking about this fatality today. Had the raccoon not been there, obviously we wouldn't be discussing this fatality. Had it been farther up the road or behind, we wouldn't be talking about it. Had the tree not been there, we wouldn't be talking about this crash. So I won't deny that it was a very bizarre occurrence. But what do we do as a result of that? Do we just, do we want to put our heads in the sand and think, wow, you know, that was really bizarre and scary and I hope that never happens to me? I don't think so. I think we want to try to learn from this. I think we'll do the young man who died, I think we'll do him a much more of a justice if we can try to learn from this and apply it to our everyday driving habits. So the first thing that we want to learn from this crash is to recognize the danger signs, or as state policemen, we are taught to recognize red flags. From what I do, from a perspective of a police officer, what I'm talking about when I say recognizing the danger signs is if I'm on a traffic stop or I'm out of my car and I'm dealing with whatever situation I'm dealing with, 9 out of 10 people, if I tell them to stand in one place, keep their hands out of their pockets, or so forth and so on, they will do that. It's a red flag when an individual, when I have to keep reminding them, take your hands out of your pockets, take your hands out of your pockets. Every time I turn around, they've got their hands in their pockets. That's a red flag. Now, in and of itself, that's not enough to really put me on high alert, but it's atypical, or it's not usually what I encounter. Usually people keep their hands out of their pockets when I tell them. Another red flag is, let's say that same individual not only won't keep their hands out of their pockets, but they start pacing up and down the road. They start pacing back and forth, back and forth. That's a second red flag. Now they're really kind of starting to get my attention. I'm wondering what's going on in this person's mind. Let's say this person's body posture changes. Let's say they do keep their hands out of their pockets for me, but they start doing this. They start clenching their fists. That's a definite red flag. That's not something that we see most people. That's not how they react when we're dealing with them on the side of the road. Another red flag, let's say they're taking a defensive posture to me now, and this is the way they're talking to me. They're kind of flexing their shoulders, loosening up their neck. They've got their hands drawn up in a defensive type posture, and if I continue to ignore him or ignore these red flags that he's sending me, he's about 2 seconds away from trying to clock me. So, like I say, you take any one of those, and maybe I'm not really in danger of catching a roundhouse from this individual. But if we take them all together, he's just being non-compliant. He's doing all these things that I'm asking him not to do. He's showing me some defensive postures. Okay, those are all red flags, and I can't ignore them. As much as maybe I want to, I don't want this to happen. I can't ignore them. I've got to identify them, and I have to deal with them. The first thing that I'd like for you to know before we start discussing the danger signs or red flags is that throughout the course of my investigation, I did not find that the driver was negligent in any way as a result of this crash. I feel that this driver reacted to the situation in a way that the majority of drivers, whether it be school bus drivers, truck drivers, general motoring public, I believe that this driver reacted to the situation in a way that most drivers would. So I just want to preface that before we start talking about the danger signs or red flags. And again, what we're talking about, danger signs or red flags, are occurrences or things that make this situation atypical or different than what we're used to from a day-to-day basis. The danger signs in this particular occurrence were, first of all, the injured raccoon. I would call that pretty atypical. It's not too often that we see a live injured animal on a roadway. The second occurrence in this one, or danger sign, we were coming to a complete stop in this area where we're not generally coming to a stop. There's no student at this location. This is not normal that we would come to a stop in this location. The third red flag or danger sign is the chaos on the bus. Generally, we hope that the drivers have a lot more control on their bus than we had in this particular situation. We've got some kids in the front of the bus that were obviously alarmed as a result of seeing this injured animal in the roadway. The fourth thing is the tree. Now, the driver was familiar with this area, but you can see so far with everything that we've got going on, it would be hard to focus on the tree at this particular time when we've got all these other things going on. But we will include that as a danger sign or a red flag. Another thing we're going to talk about is that it's dark. It's early in the morning. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. It's dark outside the bus. It's dark inside the bus. And the last danger sign or red flag in this particular situation was the driver taking an evasive action where we don't ordinarily expect to have to take any evasive action. You can see, like I say, what we discussed earlier, how bizarre this crash was. If you remove any one of those 5, or actually 6, if you remove any one of those 6, possibly we wouldn't be talking about this fatality. So what do we want to do? How can we learn from this incident, or how can we learn from these red flags or danger signs? The first thing we would want to do, and not just in this situation, but any situation that we may come in contact with during our routes, whether it be a morning route or an evening route, first thing we would want to do is try to regain control. Well, regain control of what? What are we talking about? There's a lot of there's a lot of red flags that we can't control always. We want to regain control of what we can control. So what are the things in this particular crash that we can control? We can control our bus, can't we? We've already come to a complete stop. We can control our students. We could have the driver turn on their interior lights, as well as not proceed until all are seated and quiet. So those are the things those are the only things that we can control in this particular crash. We want something that we could have done possibly is just to call a technical timeout, if you will. And we could stop. We want to get the people who are kind of panicking in the front of the bus. We want them to settle down, sit back down in their seats and remain quiet. We also want to we want to not proceed. This situation was kind of rapidly getting out of hand. And bear in mind, all of those red flags, everything took place in probably a matter of seconds. Less than a minute, I would guess, do we have all of these red flags coming together at one time. So it's kind of hard, I will agree, to make split-second decisions when you have all of these things thrown at you at one time. So, but again, just to reiterate, we want to regain control of what we can control. Turn on the interior lights, make sure the students are seated and quiet. Don't proceed until all are seated and quiet. The second thing that we want to focus on in this crash is, do we have a policy for riders, or do you have a policy for riders? First of all, do you have one? Do you enforce it? If not, it's useless. It's as useless as the paper it's written on if you do not routinely enforce your ridership policies that are in place. Again, if you don't have them, you need to get them in place immediately. If you do have them already in place, which I anticipate that you do, you need to enforce them with vigilance. The student in this particular situation violated 3 written ridership policies that the corporation has in place. The first of which is to remain seated at all times. The second is not to open or close windows. However a student finds a window, whether it be open, whether it be closed, that is the position that they are to leave that window in unless they have specific permission from the driver. The third is there to be, under no circumstances, any body parts, or the body parts are to be kept inside the window. The student in this particular situation unfortunately violated 3 of these the policies that were in place that ultimately led to his fatality. So the bottom line, how can we wrap all this up? Don't ignore the danger signs. Recognize them. If you see them coming down the path, don't ignore them. Recognize that they're different. They're atypical. They're not what we are used to seeing in this particular situation, or the red flags as we referred to them. Accept them, but don't be dictated by them. Again, recognize them, but Don't be like a sheep. If the rest of the sheep are bailing off the cliff, you don't have to follow the rest of the sheep across the cliff. Again, accept them, start to draw yourself up a plan, but don't be dictated by the red flags. Control, again, what you can control. There's only so much that we can control in a particular situation, but make sure that you do regain control of what you can control. And finally, enforce your policy with vigilance.
At this time, I'd like to introduce a flooding video presented by the National Weather Service.
The following video is divided into two segments, a 30-second public service announcement and an 8.5-minute documentary on the hidden dangers of low water crossings. Contact your nearest National Weather Service office for additional copies of this video, the script, or for more information about the hidden dangers of low water crossings.
Low water crossings are hidden dangers associated with flash floods. A low water crossing is where a road without a bridge dips across a normally dry creek bed or drainage area. These hidden dangers await unsuspecting motorists and account for nearly half of all flood-related deaths. Fast rising water across a highway can cause you to lose control of your vehicle in as little as 6 inches of water. Do not drive across flowing water. Everybody has observed flooding at some time, either firsthand or in the media. More people lose their lives in floods than in any other weather-related event. Related flood damages exceed $3 billion each year. The Great Flood of 1993 caused over $15 billion in damages across the upper Midwest. Similar floods from excessive rainfall associated with tropical storms or hurricanes attract much media attention and contain few surprises. These floods occur over days and weeks, while short-duration, intense rainfall events produce flash floods. Flash floods can roll boulders the size of cars, tear out trees, destroy buildings and bridges, and pose a significant threat to human lives. Flash floods can occur in what is normally a dry creek bed. A hidden danger awaits motorists where a road without a bridge dips across a creek bed. This is called a low water crossing. Low water crossings represent a hidden danger because flooding occurs in an area that people normally and frequently pass through. Few people appreciate the power of running water. Even fewer realize how fast water can rise in a small stream and flood a highway, creating a dangerous situation. A similar dangerous situation occurs for motorists who drive through low drainage areas flooded by standing water. Floods and flash floods are costly to human life and property. Nearly half of the flood-related deaths that occur each year are vehicle-related, and damages to vehicles can easily exceed $1 million. Although many of the highway dips that become low-water crossings are identified as potential flood areas, people do not understand the hidden dangers, and lives are needlessly lost. Dr. Susan Zevin, Deputy Assistant Administrator for Operations at the National Weather Service, will discuss why low-water crossings can be so dangerous to motorists.
Well, water weighs 62.4 pounds per cubic foot. What does that mean? That's the equivalent of 2 cinder blocks that can hit you in your knees going at 10 miles an hour. When a vehicle stalls in the water's momentum is transferred to the car. So for each foot that the water rises, 500 pounds of force on the side are applied to the car. Buoyancy is the biggest factor. For each foot of water that the water rises, it displaces 1,500 pounds that your car weighs, so that your car will weigh 1,500 pounds less than it did before. You can lose control of your car in 2 feet of water. And in smaller cars, you can lose control of the car in 6 inches of water.
Why do so many people needlessly lose their lives in flooding at road dips and low water crossings? People have extreme confidence in the size and weight of their vehicle. Many people interviewed, such as Charles Lovett, expressed surprise at the force of the water.
I tried to charge through the water, and I got about right here when the truck just stopped dead, and I panicked a little bit here, and it started to move a couple of inches, couple of feet. As we moved down into the stream here, and we started to get carried away, it wasn't a floating sensation. It was as if we were completely out of control.
The difference in many cases is inches. Those people who have at various times repeatedly driven through a flooded low water crossing do not recognize the danger of a small increase in the water level. The second misconception is the past history involved in driving through a low water crossing.
I thought it wasn't deep, but I guess it got deep.
Sign said don't go through here when it's flooded.
Oh, I know, but I went through here before, and it was not even deep at all.
The third misconception is the idea that driving fast through a low water crossing will enable the driver to arrive safely on the other side. It's simply not true. The faster a driver attempts to cross a road covered with water, the less contact he has with the road. Once the vehicle begins to hydroplane, it begins to float, and control of the vehicle is lost. Making the situation worse, more than half of all low water crossing vehicular-related deaths take place at night when visibility is limited. Under these conditions, the vulnerability of the driver and passengers to the hidden danger is greatly magnified. The existence of low water crossings is very prevalent throughout the United States, especially in the Southwest, where many low water crossings exist. There are things you can do to reduce the risk of becoming a low water crossing fatality.
Heed all flood and flash flood warnings issued by the National Weather Service. Do not drive around barricades at low water crossings. Be especially vigilant at night or when traveling on unfamiliar roads. Do not cross flowing water. Observe rising water indicators at low water crossings. Remember, as little as 6 inches of water may cause you to lose control of your car. Be aware that roadbeds may be washed away under the floodwaters. If you choose to abandon your vehicle, respect the force of the water. Remember, just 6 inches of fast-moving water will knock you off your feet.
Floods and flash floods will continue to occur. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and its National Weather Service, has the mission to provide river and flood forecasts and warnings to the nation. But the warnings are only effective if the people know and understand the dangers of floods. Rising waters over roadways pose a threat to life, save lives and property. Don't take chances with hidden dangers at low water crossings.
Now let's look at some pictures that actually involve school buses. As you look at these, think if you ever driven through high water, but were you able to get away with it? Now knowing what water can do, would you do it again? Is this worth it to put yourself and any of your students at risk? Where would you go to get to higher ground, and could you get there safely? Not only did the
children have to be rescued by the fire department personnel, but they too were put in dangerous situations because of one driver who didn't want to use the way around the water. They thought they could make it through it. Severe weather, thunderstorms, tornadoes, and lightning. These are nature's most violent storms. This is not about being a weather watcher or a meteorologist. This is info to get you thinking about severe weather so that you can have or develop a plan of action when severe weather is forecasted in your area. Thunderstorms. All thunderstorms are dangerous. They can produce and will produce tornadoes and or strong winds. These strong winds can be in excess of 250 miles per hour. Lightning. Lightning can strike you anywhere. Be extremely careful about the situation. Be extremely careful about the students as they exit or enter the bus during lightning storms. Flash flooding. The #1 cause of death associated with thunderstorms. Tornadoes. Tornadoes are most likely to occur between 3 and 9 p.m., but can happen at any time. So be prepared, especially on the afternoon routes and athletic events, but don't forget about the morning time during your morning route. But the warmer weather we seem to be having year-round, never forget about tornadoes. When driving and a tornado is sighted, you should turn and drive at right angles to the storm. The truth is, the best thing is to seek the best available shelter. If everyone drives at a right angle, then there would be nothing but a traffic jam and no place of safety to go. Lightning causes 80 fatalities annually. Tires on your vehicle will protect you from being struck by lightning. Truth is, tires provide no protection from lightning. Although you may be injured if lightning strikes your car, you are much safer to remain inside. Something to think about here is that there may be some kids that are actually scared of lightning or storms in general, so be prepared to help those students. Warning and watches. Watches. Severe thunderstorms, tornadoes are possible. There are favorable conditions that a storm could occur or flooding may occur because of heavy rain or large amounts of rain over a period of days. Don't take a nice sunny day as that nothing will happen even though a watch was issued. Warnings. Thunderstorm, tornadoes, or flooding is imminent in your area. The storm has been indicated and is heading towards the county that you are in. You must know the difference between a watch and a warning and take the appropriate action as necessary. Follow your school policy concerning a watch or a warning. It may even be better to stay at the school than try to travel along the bus route. Each year, many people are killed or seriously injured by tornadoes or severe thunderstorms despite advance warnings. Some will believe it will not happen to them. Once you receive a warning or observe threatening skies, you must take the decision to seek shelter before it is too late. This could be the most important decision you ever make. You could even have practice drills so that you're more prepared of what to do. Floods, know a different route to get around a flooded area and keep good communications with your school. Be prepared. It is up to you to develop a plan for you and your family at home, work, and school, or follow your district policy. Identify a safe place before you may need to use it. By knowing the county of your routes or parish where you live and drive the school bus will help you when a flooding situation arises so that you're better prepared. Watch for signs of approaching storms. Try to keep the weather on your mind at all times, especially when there has been a watch or warning issued by the National Weather Service. A couple internet sites that have general information concerning thunderstorms, lightning, and tornadoes. If you don't have a policy, these will help you develop one. You know the damage that these storms can produce, so be careful when driving and threatening weather watch or warning has been issued. That concludes our portion of the summer safety meeting. If you have any questions or concerns pertaining to the material that was presented, feel free to discuss that with your motor carrier enforcement officer here today. Thank you.